Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Between 20 and 25 Canadians have been allowed to leave war-torn Gaza for Egypt. We have the details. The rising cost of living is really taking its toll on nonprofit groups. We hear how utilities are having a major impact on those who serve our community. And according to recent polls, the Trudeau Liberals' popularity continues to tank across Canada. Political reporter Brian Lilly will have the details.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The first group of between 20 and 25 Canadians made it out of Gaza into Egypt on Tuesday. Now, Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly says Ottawa is working to evacuate the rest. It's not clear how many Canadians were in the first group, but around 80 people with ties to Canada were on a list authorized and released by the General Authority for Border Crossings in Gaza. Meanwhile, humanitarian groups have renewed calls for a ceasefire in Gaza, saying the situation in the region is dire as the war between Israel and Hamas continues.
While some organisations and local partners are providing immediate assistance to civilians on the ground, they are highly restricted in their ability to assist due to the total blockade, lack of safe humanitarian access, and extreme violence.
Never in our work have we seen a humanitarian catastrophe like the one we're witnessing in Gaza. As we speak, over 2 million civilians are being collectively punished for the world to see. I can never forget the video of the 4-year-old injured boy, tears and blood streaming down his face and trembling from fear. No parents, no blankets, no hugs, only fear. Most families cannot escape the attacks that have hit their homes, refugee camps, mosques, churches, hospitals. Simply and horrifyingly put, there is no safe place to go in Gaza.
The Canadians who were recently evacuated from Gaza are being bused to Cairo, where they will then have to make some personal decisions about their next destinations. Survivors were pulled from the rubble as the ground offensive from Israel moves across the Gaza Strip. The war with Hamas has continued since the attack by Hamas in southern Israel, which left more than 1,400 people dead.
We were sleeping. Babies, children, elderly people. I'm 54 years old. My brother is 67 years old. I'm not sure about their fate. We were sleeping. We're peaceful people. We have nothing to do with the so-called Israel, the enemies of humanity.
The Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry reports more than 10,000 Palestinians have been killed over the past 4 weeks. Now, one Palestinian woman who survived retells the story of her journey after heeding the Israeli warning to flee northern Gaza.
شوفنا ناس يعني كيف احكي لك هلقيت انا بحكي لك وانا هاديه كيف لو بدها تشوفهم دموع تنزل دموع إشي مرعب كتير كتير. تخيل انك انت بتمشي على ناس ورجليك هيك على ناس ميتة يعني إشي يعني كيف احكي لك يعني قد ما بدي اوصف لك مش على الفاضي يعني الا تشوف بعينك. اليهود واحنا ماشيين يخوفونا يعني قصف يعني إشي مرعب. يقولوا كانوا إشي يعني يقصفوا الرمل هذا هيك زي كأنهم بخوفونا على رجلينا. طبعا ما حدش لازم يطمل شبشبي والله العظيم انه انقطع من كتر الخوف. مشيت ضليتني امشي حافيه وخفت البس بوته.
The Biden administration is sending around $105 billion in military and humanitarian aid to both Israel and Ukraine. But according to Victoria Coates, Vice President of Public Policy at the Heritage Foundation in the U.S., only around 10% of that money will actually be going to Israel. She says much more is needed to help Israel in its fight with the terrorist group Hamas.
Israel has just suffered a grievous attack. It engaged in a ground war in Gaza. The first ballistic missile fired at Israel since 1991 with Saddam Hussein was fired last night by the Houthi. This is a bad problem, and we need to get a clear message through the Congress. President needs to sign it on Israel. The other things, Taiwan is a pressing problem, but not currently in a shooting war. The southern border is a pressing problem, but nothing in this supplemental will secure the southern border. And the United States taxpayers have already given 111, at my last count, billion to the effort in Ukraine. This 60 now can't be as critical as it's being made out to be.
The Trudeau government will be building more than 2,800 homes on its properties in cities across the country by the end of March of next year. Procurement Minister Jean-Yves Duclos says the plan is to build close to 30,000 homes on public lands by the year 2029. The announcement comes as the Liberal government faces criticism over its handling of the national housing crisis.
This includes housing projects in Calgary, Edmonton, St. John's, and Ottawa, with a minimum of 300 set aside for affordable housing. These are significant steps forward, but we know we need to do more. One way to do this is through Canada Land's new strategic plan, which now clearly sets a direction to enable a minimum of 20% affordable housing units when a municipality does not have a minimum requirement, making housing affordability a key priority. As it stands, it means that over the next 5 years, Canada Land's company is projecting to enable approximately 26,400 units on its properties, with a minimum 20% of the units to be set aside for affordable housing.
Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre blasted Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in the House of Commons on Tuesday. He says Trudeau really dropped the ball when he voted against pausing the carbon tax for all sources of home heating, and not just home heating, oil, which is used by many in Atlantic Canada.
And he started by giving a temporary pause to some people in a region where he was plummeting in the polls and his caucus was revolting. But then he found that the entire country was in revolt and he needed a new coalition partner to save him from my common sense confidence vote to take the heat off, to take the tax off the heat. He got that support from the Bloc Québécois. We now learn that he has been in discussions with the Bloc to help him stay in power for 2 years. What did he promise the separatists for them to enter into this costly carbon tax coalition?
Contrary to the divisive rhetoric that the Leader of the Opposition is putting forward, the measures we announced on transitioning people on oil to heat pumps apply right across the country. The doubling of the rural top-up right across the country. We're going to continue to work with Canadians to phase out home heating oil, which is dirtier and more expensive. And I want to recognize that we are willing to work with anyone in this House who will step up in the fight against climate change. And I thank the Leader of the Bloc Québécois for continuing to be firm on building a better future for all our kids, on fighting for climate change, against climate change on this and in other occasions.
Well, according to recent polls, the Trudeau Liberals are plummeting in popularity across the country. Political reporter Brian Lilly says having the Liberals vote against the Tory motion of exempting the carbon tax on all forms of home heating didn't really help their cause. Lilly also says past Liberal voters are simply frustrated right now.
There was no scenario that turned out well for the Liberals. A new leader would not necessarily help. They looked at past Liberal voters. 77% of past Liberal voters from the 2021 election just said, I'm tired of him. 82% said he makes promises he can't keep, and 91% said he's inauthentic. Those are hard numbers to recover from, Hal. But that's what Trudeau and the Liberals are facing right now.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Sun columnist and political reporter Brian Lilly and myself coming up after business news. Well, we saw a little more moisture in Lethbridge today with some light shower activity. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early peek at the forecast. Jeanette, it appears as though the rain clouds may be leaving us, however.
Yeah, we should see the sky start to clear up a little bit this evening, although we are still expecting a 30% chance of showers early this evening, but overnight, that's when that sky should clear up. By the way, I wanted to mention also that Lethbridge was the warm spot in the province earlier this afternoon at 10 degrees. I think we actually reached higher than what was expected today. And then as we get into tomorrow, we're looking at mainly clear skies, sunshine, 7 degrees. And as we get closer to our long weekend, we're going to be seeing some double digits there. And I'll be back later in the show to tell you all about it.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much, Jeanette. Well, as you've heard on Bridge City News, the Trudeau Liberals, along with the Bloc, shot down that Tory motion to put a temporary carbon tax pause on all home heating. Now, this carbon tax continues to hurt many in our community as the rising cost of living continues to climb. Bill Genther, who runs the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen, says it's not only the carbon tax which is hurting them, but also electricity rates, which have gone up by quite a bit.
One of the things we found, first of all, is that the price of utilities has gone completely through the roof. Just an example, for 3 years running, our utility bill, which mostly electrical, was about $1,700 a month. It went up to $2,900, then went to $39, then to $49, and went just over $5,000 for exactly the same service we had for years. So in our case, I mean, that's a major hit when you have an organization that runs, on simply donated monies, and there's only a certain amount that you have available. So what we did is we actually switched companies, and we ended up going back to about $100 more than we had been spending on that before. So that's one side of it. The other side is that we obviously spend a lot more for everything, including fuel for our vehicles. We do pickups every day. Obviously, in order for us to keep operating, we will go to all the grocery stores, pick up food, etc. And of course, the fuel costs are really, really high. And we know that it impacts everything, including the groceries we have to buy. So yeah, it's a major thing, and it's unfortunate that we don't look at that, or that there isn't a break for nonprofits, but that's our reality.
Ken Kissick, who's the founder of the Streets Alive Christian Mission here in Lethbridge, agrees that the rising cost of living has been hurting his nonprofit group as well. Streets Alive provides for many of our most vulnerable in our city, including those who are homeless. He says the federal carbon tax has really taken its toll.
Well, obviously the carbon tax is affecting everybody. So for charities like ours, donors have less money to donate, and then our costs are up. Utility costs are probably doubled in the last year for us. We're heading into a winter season. You got inflation, so it's making things very, very tight for us.
It's that time of year when we really need to start to think about Christmas giving. It appears as though one organization is already ahead of the game. Instead of using Santa's sleigh, they had some help with motorcycles throughout the year. And as BCN's Jeanette Rocher reports now, several Southern Alberta charities benefited from the generosity of the Southern Alberta bikers.
A little bit of a donation, and we'd like.
Christmas came early for at least 10 local nonprofit charitable organizations this week. Bags and bags of toys were packed up, carried out, and delivered to children at YWCA's Harbour House, Lethbridge Family Services, Chinook Regional Hospital, as well as the Colehurst Legion.
The toys are going to go to our kids' Christmas party, which is happening on December 10th for members, children ages 12 and under.
The stuffies accompanied some giant checks, most for $500, but all of them totaling $10,000. And they were handed off by the Southern Alberta Bikers Association. Dallas Hardy is their president.
Our fundraising efforts have been just so successful. We're just gleaming with happiness. We actually sanction 2 major events throughout the year. In the spring, we have our awareness motorcycle parade and teddy bear parade, which is combined into one event. And so that event, we gather up teddy bears and funds. A lot of that goes to the Chinook Regional Hospital. And then in September of each year, we have our Southern Alberta Toy Run. Again, cash, teddy bears, toys, all donated, stuff donated from the general public and the business community.
Lethbridge Pregnancy Care Centre received their donation while celebrating their 10-year anniversary.
And in that time, we've had over 1,900 women come through our doors. So we're really thankful for that donation of $500. They'll go a long ways to help our clients. So not only do we offer that emotional and practical educational support, but also practical supports. And so that can look like things like diapers, formula. For a lot of women, a concern for them in parenting is the financial piece. Knowing that there's somewhere that they can get support with those things is a huge relief and can really lift the burden.
Donations also went to Lethbridge and District Humane Society to help dogs like Tony here. Also receiving donations were Streets Alive Mission, Chinook Child and Youth Advocacy Center, Lakeview School, the Good Samaritan Society, and the Green and Yellow Group.
Just a great day for us as a group to be able to go out and put some smiles on faces and see the fruits of all of our hard work through the year.
For Bridge City News, I'm Jeanette Rocher.
Great job by the Southern Alberta Bikers. Way to go. Some recent jobs numbers have come out and they look quite promising. It shows that from January to October, employment in Alberta has increased by almost 84,000 jobs, just under 83% of those jobs being full-time. Now, according to Stats Canada and ATB Economics, most are coming from the private sector. To chat about the jobs numbers in more detail is the CEO of Economic Development Lethbridge, Trevor Lewington, who joins us from here in the Windy City. Trevor, which sectors specifically have been doing a lot of the hiring? Construction, technology, retail?
Provincially, the construction sector has rebounded quite nicely, which is good to see because that has such a broad impact across other areas of the economy. Manufacturing here in Lethbridge has done quite well so far this year. And we're always thrilled when manufacturing does well because of the sort of overstated impact it has on the rest of the value chain. It creates jobs elsewhere in the system. So, good news that there's the majority of jobs created in the province were full-time, and also the vast majority coming from the private sector. So that's signs of a fairly resilient economy, notwithstanding some of the challenges that are out there. So that's the good news.
So how do the numbers look specifically for our region here in southwestern Alberta?
When we look at the Lethbridge census metropolitan area, the unemployment rate last month was 5%. That was a pretty big drop from 5.6 the month before. So what does that translate into? Well, the workforce total employment is now just over 70,000 people employed in our area, and that's 3,000 more than the previous month. So that's a pretty significant jump that we'll be sort of keeping an eye on to make sure that trend continues.
Now, according to this recent study, it says mostly those aged 25 to 54 who are finding employment, or about 55%, but over 26% of those over the age of 55 are also finding work.
We would typically expect to see the vast majority of employment in that 25 to 54 age demographic. That is your key working years. But to your point, exciting when you see seniors and others able to access the employment, gain access to jobs and drive the economy forward as well. So nice to see that the job gains are broad-based across sort of every age demographic out there.
Thanks so much for your time today, Trevor. That was Trevor Lewington, CEO of Economic Development Lethbridge. Youth involvement was discussed at great length during the UCP's recent AGM in Calgary. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith, along with Transportation and Economic Corridors Minister Devin Dreeshen, spoke about the importance of raising the next generation of leaders.
The young people that we have in this room are going to be the lifeblood of the UCP now and on into the future, and so it gives me great hope. You guys being here, it reinvigorates our party, it reinvigorates the debate.
Now, the organizer behind last Friday's Next Gen events, Roy Beyer, says he really plans to send influencers to campuses and make resources available that challenge the readily available left-leaning ideology.
Most of our kids coming out of university are really left-leaning because of the influence in those universities and colleges. So our challenge is to have strong conservative clubs in all the universities and colleges so that there's an alternative. When they're hearing from their professors the garbage they're hearing, that they have a place where they can meet really intelligent fellow students and speakers and know that their conservative beliefs are sound and they can start advocating. So that's important. And of course, as we start doing that, the young people are the ones who are going to have a voice that will influence other young people.
Now, as for next year's UCP Annual General Meeting, organizers said it'll take place in Red Deer in September. Hyperbaric chambers, you may have heard of them. Now, they're used to help athletes who've been injured to heal a lot quicker. Brian and Cassandra Meyerhofer, owners of the Oxygen House in Lethbridge and Raymond, explained what it's like to use a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. They discuss the benefits of this kind of therapy and how it actually works.
So it's a chamber that you crawl into, and you breathe 95% oxygen through a nose piece, and then we increase the pressure to 1.3 atmospheres. Now, 1.3 atmospheres is like being 10 feet underwater. So you do have to pop your ears as you go along. What that increased pressure does is it allows the gas, oxygen, to dissolve into your blood and your blood plasma. Now, blood plasma can go in parts of your body that red blood cells can't fit. So it also goes into your other fluids as well, like cerebral spinal fluid and your other fluids as well. So it's flooding your body with oxygen, oxygen is like energy to your body. And then your body starts fixing up the place.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Brian and Cassandra from the Oxygen House and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our broadcast. Well, we had a mostly cloudy day here in Lethbridge with a little bit of moisture, but a high-pressure system should be arriving soon, clearing out a lot of the clouds, giving us lots of sunshine over the next few days. A full look at the weather forecast is coming up. It was mainly overcast in Lethbridge with some light showers earlier today. Our weather analyst, Jeanette Rocher, is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, it appears as though a high-pressure system is moving in, clearing out the clouds and bringing us more sunshine this week?
Yes, true. We just have to get through this evening. We could see 30% more showers. But after that, skies clearing up. We're looking at sunshine throughout the rest of that 7-day forecast, looking at a high of 7 degrees on Wednesday, up to 8 Thursday, 7 on Friday. And then we're going to get into those double digits. Look at that for the long weekend there. High of 10 degrees on Saturday, all the way up to the teens on both a Sunday and Monday. So I'm looking forward to that. That's actually very lovely for the middle of November. So we're looking at actually getting into higher averages, higher temperatures rather than the average high for this time of year, which is 6 degrees, average low -5. 22 was our high temperature back in 1999. And in 73, it was -27. 7:30 is when the sun rose this morning, sunset this evening. Look at that. We're now in the 4 o'clock hour, 4:59 p.m. We're looking at 4 minutes less than yesterday. I'm not liking this going back to standard time thing. That's when the sun seems to go down so early in the evening and you just feel like you're going to go home from work and go straight to bed. Anyways, we are looking at high of 11 both in Victoria and Vancouver tomorrow. Victoria looking at sunshine, not so much in Vancouver, looking at some rainy skies there. Clear skies across the rest of Alberta tomorrow, 5 degrees for both Edmonton and Calgary. And as we look to the rest of the prairies, let's move them on over there. Get those graphics in place. High of 2 degrees in Saskatoon, mix of sun and cloud, looking at -1 for Regina. Could see some flurries. Chance of showers in Winnipeg, looking at a high of 2 degrees. Okay, as we look to the rest of the country here, get into central part of Canada, 5 degrees for a high right there in Toronto. Looking at chance of rain, mix of sun and cloud in Ottawa, high of 2 degrees. Double that for Montreal with a high of 4 degrees and clear skies. As we get to Fredericton, looking at a high of 1 only. Chance of flurries, looking at mix of showers and flurries in Halifax, high of 6, 5 degrees for a high in Charlottetown with some showers. Shower activity also expected tomorrow in St. John's with a high of 10 degrees. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
The deadline to repay pandemic loans and receive partial forgiveness is coming up on January the 18th. Small business owners, however, are still hoping Ottawa will reverse course and extend it again for another year. Nearly 900,000 organizations took out a loan from the Canada Emergency Business Account Program during the pandemic. The initiative offered up to $60,000 in interest-free loans. Just over $49 billion was dispersed. Business owners say they need more time for the payback to qualify for partial forgiveness, citing ongoing challenges facing small businesses post-pandemic. Stats Canada says our country's merchandise trade surplus more than doubled to $2 billion in September. The agency says exports rose 2.7% to $67 billion for that month. The increase came as higher oil prices helped boost energy exports, while total imports increased 1% to $65 billion. TransAlta reported a profit of $372 million for its third quarter that ended September 30th. That's an increase of $61 million from a year ago. Revenue with the power producer also increased $1.02 billion. That compares with $929 million in the same quarter last year. The figures come nearly a week after TransAlta announced a multi-million-dollar deal to purchase Heartland Generation and its power generation business in Alberta and British Columbia. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 168 points on the day to finish at 19,575. The Dow was up 56 points to 34,152. The S&P 500 was up 12 on the day to 4378, and the Nasdaq was up 121 points to 13,639. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 368 to 77.14 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 9 cents to 317 US. Gold was down 908 on the day to 1969.11 US an ounce, and silver was down 40 cents to 22.63 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $9.31 per bushel, barley's at $7.29, canola's at $15.85, and corn is at $8.59 per bushel. Live cattle December contract was down $2.55 to $178.78. Feeder cattle were down $4.95 to $232.23, and lean hogs December contract was up 50 cents to $72.90. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to $72.66 US. Recapping one of our top stories, a group of between 20 to 25 Canadians has left war-torn Gaza for Egypt. Global Affairs says it expects up to 80 more Canadian citizens and eligible family members to leave Gaza soon as well. Ottawa says there are around 450 Canadians who are waiting to leave the region as the war between Israel and Hamas intensifies. Recent polls say the Trudeau Liberals are plummeting in popularity, with the Liberals shooting down the Conservative motion of pausing the carbon tax on all forms of home heating that really didn't help their cause much. Political reporter Brian Lilly will have more details for us shortly. Listen, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of today's local stories, check out our website, bridgecitynews.ca. The Conservative motion to eliminate the carbon tax on all home heating was shot down in Parliament recently. The Trudeau government said it was pausing the tax on home heating oil, which is mostly good news for those in the Atlantic provinces and in parts of southern Ontario, but not so much for us here in the West who use a lot of natural gas. Now, to chat about this in more detail is political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilly, who joins us once again from Toronto. Brian, as Pierre Poilievre said, it was the separatist Bloc Party that supported the Liberals' carbon tax?
Yes, the Bloc blocked the rest of us from getting a break. It's utterly ridiculous, Hal, and it comes down to regional politics, all of it. Of course, Justin Trudeau paused this because he, was watching his support in Atlantic Canada melt faster than the polar ice caps, and he said, "Well, I've got to do something." So he said, "Well, this is a national program. It's open to Canadians across the country who heat with home heating oil." Except here's the problem. I know you said Southern Ontario, there's a lot of people using home heating oil. No, it's about 2% of homes in Ontario use home heating oil. But you go out to Prince Edward Island, and according to stats that I've cited from the Nova Scotia Finance Department, it's 49% in PEI, where the Liberals hold all 4 seats. It's 36% in Nova Scotia, where the Liberals hold most of the seats. It's 22% in Newfoundland and Labrador, where they hold pretty much all the seats. New Brunswick, it drops down to 7. I mean, that's where it starts to become insignificant. And then, I thought that I thought that all of Ontario was the biggest place for natural gas. You guys are even bigger. We're at like 70-odd%. You guys are over 80% of homes heated with natural gas. And so Pierre Poilievre says, well, let's give the break to everyone. Sounds fine, sounds fair.
Sure.
No, the Bloc jumped in and said no. And here's the interesting breakdown. The Bloc says no because Quebec has its own carbon tax, so this isn't going to apply to Quebec. But in British Columbia, they also have their own carbon tax. So it won't apply there, but the NDP there voted for it, saying, we've got to have fairness. The Bloc's just backing Justin Trudeau, and Trudeau relying on the separatists. I don't know, you tell me, is that going to fly in Lethbridge? Is that going to fly in Red Deer, in Calgary? It's not going to fly in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, for goodness sakes. This is a ridiculous proposition.
It's funny, the reason I brought up Southern Ontario, I had friends in Etobicoke, this Van Tessen family, and they took me downstairs and showed me their big tanker of oil, that they had. So I'm like, we use natural gas in Alberta, so it was kind of a shock for me to see this big tanker in their basement. It was pretty incredible. Now, Brian, if the motion would have passed, would all Canadians have really gotten a break?
Well, it was not a binding motion, so perhaps not. But let's say that the Bloc Québécois said, you know what? Everyone should be treated the same. Then there would have at least been pressure on the Trudeau government to do it. Now, here's one of the things that a lot of people don't know. In Quebec, heating with electricity, which is unaffordable in the rest of the country, is very common. And that's part of why they voted against this. The reason hydroelectricity is so affordable, so cheap, and why it's so prevalent for home heating in Quebec is because decades ago, they did something that wouldn't be allowed anymore. They flooded huge areas of the James Bay region to put in huge hydroelectric dams. Like, these would not be approved by Stephen Guilbeault today. They wouldn't be approved by anybody. But that's why Quebec has abundant, cheap hydroelectricity. So they're saying this is for the environment. The only reason they can do it is because of their past environmental sins. But as far as the motion goes, it should have passed. The Bloc should have said that the Trudeau government was wrong. It wouldn't have caused an election, but it would have put pressure on them. Now, I'll say there's still going to be pressure. I live in Ontario. There's 76 Liberal MPs. You only have 2 in Alberta. You know, Randy Boissonnault and George Halal, they're going to have to answer for everything under the sun. But imagine going to, you know, the neighbors of your friends in Etobicoke, where pretty much everyone else heats with natural gas, and you've got to knock on the door and say, "Hi, I'd like your vote. I'm with the Liberal Party." And you say, "Well, why did the guys in Cape Breton get a break on home heating and I didn't?" And you've got to explain that. That's going to be very difficult for the Ontario Liberal MPs. It's going to be very difficult for the 15 Liberals in British Columbia, where they hold more seats than the Conservatives and the NDP. That's going to be difficult in Manitoba, where the NDP premier called for fairness and where the Liberals hold a significant number of seats. So, yeah, maybe they saved a few votes in Atlantic Canada, not enough to, you know, save the red wall they used to have out there. But in the rest of the country, people are going to be angry.
Now, the Conservatives say that a Liberal MP, Ken McDonald of Newfoundland, actually flipped the bird during the vote. Now, you saw the video, Brian. What say you as the video replay judge?
Yeah, you know, let's pretend we're watching Monday Night Football and you go to the video replay. You know, Ken McDonald, so it started with Carrie Ann Finlay, the Conservative whip, standing up and saying, she didn't say flip the bird. She used a different term I'm not sure we can use on air, but she kept saying, he did this, he did that. This is what he's doing. He said, "Oh, no, I scratched my head with side of my head with 2 fingers," he said in a thick Newfoundland accent. No, he didn't. And you can look at the video and he is clearly laughing and smirking and he knows what he's doing. And then even as he's trying to explain it away, he's laughing and smirking. Now, Ken McDonald was the Liberal MP who recently voted against the carbon tax on another motion and said, this is hurting people in Newfoundland. He was the one leading the charge to get the break. Well, Atlantic Canadians, be they in Newfoundland, in Labrador, in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, they got the break. And when he was voting and the Conservatives were heckling him, he basically told them what he thought of the rest of Canada. We got the break, you didn't. You can go pound sand.
Na poo-poo on you. Now, Brian, Jagmeet Singh and the NDP are now pushing to have the Liberals remove GST from home heating. Not as good as removing the carbon tax, but what, every dollar counts?
Well, it'd be 5% off your home heating, regardless of what it is. And perhaps, you know, I believe the Conservatives voted against this motion the last time. Maybe they'd vote against it this time. What's funny is that, you know, as this whole debate about the Conservative motion was going on, is you had Liberal MPs like Francis Drouin, who represents Glengarry Prescott Russell. That's a rural area just outside of Ottawa. You know, not a ton of home heating there by oil, but there's going to be more than in the city because it's farming communities. So, you know, probably more propane, very prominent in farming communities where they don't have access to natural gas, but there's going to be some home heating. And Francis Drouin was defending not expanding this to everyone and saying like, well, look, this is the way it is. Well, this guy is now going to be stuck trying to explain this away. He tried to say that, you know, everything's going to be fine and we don't need to expand it. Well, I'm sorry. And by the way, he used that example of maybe the Ford government should give a break on the provincial sales tax for Ontario residents on home heating. He voted against the NDP motion to give the break on GST. So he voted against it last time. Now he's advocating it as long as somebody else does it.
Brian, the Liberals voting against the Tory motion to take off the carbon tax for all home heating appears to be hurting Trudeau in the polls. In fact, a new poll by the Toronto Star, of all places, says the Liberals cannot recover. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so there are 2 polls that were done over the last weekend, or over the weekend after Trudeau made the announcement. One was by Leger, most accurate pollster in the last election, and they had the Conservatives leading 40% to 26% nationally. And as you and I have talked before, national polls don't mean anything. But in Atlantic Canada, where the Liberals had previously had their red wall, in a poll taken in the 3 days after Trudeau's announcement, the Conservatives were at 46%. They had a double-digit lead over the Liberals. It was remarkable. Then Abacus goes into the field for the Toronto Star. This was a commission poll. That doesn't take away from it. Commission polls can be valid. But the Star asked Abacus, who I used to work with. They said, can you go into the field for us and look at how deep the antipathy is towards Justin Trudeau, and can he recover? What if somebody else took over as leader? What if this happened? What if that happened? And what they found was there was no scenario that turned out well for the Liberals. A new leader would not necessarily help. They looked at past Liberal voters. 77% of past Liberal voters from the 2021 election just said, I'm tired of him. 82% said he makes promises he can't keep, and 91% said he's inauthentic. Those are hard numbers to recover from, Hal. But that's what Trudeau and the Liberals are facing right now. So it's a very strange place that they're in. David Coletto, the president and CEO of Abacus Data, said, you know, these types of numbers are hard to recover from. I'm not writing the Trudeau Liberals off, and anyone who did would be foolish, because they're, you know, campaigns matter, things can happen. Pierre Poilievre could step on a rake, as they say, and, you know, cause a self-inflicted injury. Who knows what could happen? But as things stand now, it's not good for Justin Trudeau and the Liberals.
You know, it's interesting, though. A lot of the old school Liberals, like Dan McTagg, who you and I know quite well, he's the president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. He was a longtime Liberal MP serving under Chrétien and Martin, and he can't stand the current Liberal Party the way it stands right now under Justin Trudeau. He says they've gone so far left, way past the NDP and even past the Green Party. He says they're not the Liberal Party that I remember, the centrist party, right?
Look at the letter last week from Senator Percy Downs, Jean Chrétien's former chief of staff. He said that Justin Trudeau, is gone too far, that the party needs to have a new leader, that it needs to come back to the center. Trudeau was asked about that going into the House of Commons the other day. They said, well, what do you say to Senator Down? Like, he's still a sitting senator. Yeah. He's Chrétien's former chief. And Trudeau was like, who? Who are you talking? Oh, Percy, how's he doing? I wish him all the best. Pretended that nothing was going on.
Wow. Brian, you've been a longtime critic of our public broadcaster, the CBC. Now, this time your criticism has something to do with their coverage of the UCP's most recent annual general meeting, the AGM, which took place in Calgary. I mean, Bridge City News was there. We were there at Stampede Park covering all the many resolutions that passed. As for CBC's coverage, what really caught your attention?
There's this great big headline, and then it was repeated on all their political chat shows. Controversial motion about parental rights. And I thought, can these guys not read polling? Have they not seen it? Or do they have an agenda? And my view is they have an agenda on parental rights, which they just keep dismissing as illegitimate, ill-informed, bunch of hicks. The idea that this is controversial, of course, it comes back to the SOGI, the gender pronouns, all of those issues. And the most definitive polling we have on this is from a few months ago from the Angus Reid Institute. And they looked at it and said, should mom and dad be informed? Now, there was a split on whether mom and dad should be informed and give consent, or just be informed before schools can make changes to names, gender, or pronouns. But 78% said mom and dad have to be informed. That's the primary basis of why CBC says it's controversial. Only 14% in that poll said, oh no, mom and dad should never be informed. That's the side CBC's on. So they view a policy that 78% of Canadians say yes to, that 82% of Canadian households with children under 18 present say yes to, and they say that's controversial, but the 14%, the side that they are always defending, well, I mean, that's normal. That's mainstream, 14%. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. You wonder why CBC can't say that Hamas is a terrorist organization? They can't read a poll properly. They don't know what's controversial and what's mainstream.
You got to learn how to read the room. Brian, something Alberta Premier Daniel Smith has been talking a lot about recently is the potential of an Alberta pension plan. Now, this has also caught the attention of Federal Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland and our provincial counterparts who met recently to talk about it. How feasible is this, Alberta pulling out of the Canada Pension Plan?
It's feasible. It won't be easy. Obviously, as we discussed last week, Ontario's finance minister, Peter Bethlen-Falvey, a very conservative guy, very level-headed guy. He has concerns, especially when Daniel Smith says, we want more than half the money. That's going to make him sit up and say, well, wait a minute, we've got 40% of the population. How do you get more than half the money? So, there's going to be back and forth like this. But the Trudeau Liberals are really trying to campaign hard on this. As the Poilievre Conservatives were asking about the carbon tax pause this week and asking, will you extend it to the rest of the country? The Liberals would stand up and say, you can't even stand up for pensions. Why are you talking? Like, they are making this into an issue like you wouldn't believe how. They're trying to drill it down. I go back to the firewall letter, which is more than 20 years ago from Stephen Harper, where Stephen Harper said, we need a firewall in Alberta. And that includes an Alberta pension plan. I believe there was a call for an Alberta provincial police force. And people still in central Canada look at these ideas and say, well, how on earth can you do that? Well, Quebec has an Alberta Quebec pension plan. Quebec has a provincial police force. Ontario has a provincial police force. These sorts of things should not be controversial. It's how you go about doing it. Do you do it in a sensible manner? I'll give Premier Smith credit for this. She seems to be trying to do it in a sensible manner and says she won't even hold a vote until she can give Albertans a clear number on what's there. Maybe in the end, she only ends up with a better deal for Alberta, and that's probably a good thing for her voters. Maybe she ends up with an Alberta pension plan. If so, I hope it doesn't hurt the rest of the country. But that's the concern that you're going to hear from people like Peter Bethlen-Falvey. In the meantime, you're going to see the Trudeau Liberals campaign against Alberta, as they do on everything else, to try and scare voters in the rest of the country to vote for them rather than the Conservatives.
Political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Liddy, thanks so much for joining us today from Toronto.
Thank you.
Well, more and more people are seeking alternatives to traditional medicine for their health challenges. And some of the more cutting-edge types of treatment include hyperbaric oxygen therapy and infrared light therapy. So joining us today are Brian and Cassandra Meyerhofer. They are the owners of the Oxygen House, which is located in Lethbridge and also in Raymond, Alberta. We welcome them now to Bridge City News. Brian and Cassandra, welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. Thanks for joining me. I'm really interested in hearing all about this. So first of all, maybe give us a bit of an overview of what exactly you do at Oxygen House. What exactly is it, this oxygen therapy?
Well, we're a small health clinic, and we started out with hyperbaric oxygen, and we quickly added infrared lights. And then we began learning about the bioimmunity testing and hair mineral analysis testing. So we're qualified to do those tests as well, which help us understand your body chemistry and how you can change body chemistry and just increase your health. And we have natural food-based supplements and minerals, really awesome minerals. And we use nutrition, minerals, and these alternative methods like hyperbarics to help people increase their health.
Okay, so you're called Oxygen House, but it's much more than just oxygen. Okay, so what exactly is this oxygen therapy? So it involves this hyperbaric oxygen chamber. So how does it work and what does it do exactly?
Yeah, so it's a chamber that you crawl into, and you breathe 95% oxygen through a nose piece, and then we increase the pressure to 1.3 atmospheres. Now, 1.3 atmospheres is like being 10 feet underwater. So you do have to pop your ears as you go along. What that increased pressure does is it allows the gas, oxygen, to dissolve into your blood and your blood plasma. Now, blood plasma can go in parts of your body that red blood cells can't fit. So it also goes into your other fluids as well, like cerebral spinal fluid and your other fluids as well. So it's flooding your body with oxygen, oxygen is like energy to your body. And then your body starts fixing up the place.
That's incredible. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. It sounds a little scary. You crawl into a chamber and it closes around. You've got a tube in your nose. It sounds very futuristic, like when they would find the pods with the people. I don't know. Exactly. What does it feel like? Is it relaxing?
It's very relaxing.
Okay.
I sleep. A lot of people sleep. But you can read a book. You can be on your phone. But it's very. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not dark in there?
No. And you can bring a light in there too. We have a portable light that goes inside, and it has big, large windows. People are claustrophobic. We sit right by the window, just make sure they're okay, and slowly increase the pressure, make sure they're equalizing their ears as we go along.
Yeah. So. Okay. Are you able to communicate with them while they're in there? Is there a speaker? Okay.
We communicate through the window. Yeah, you can hear us through the
Okay.
window.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How long is a session? Like, how
Usually,
long does it last?
yeah, 1 hour.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 hours, but 1 hour is usually what we recommend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. What kind of benefits should a patient expect? Like, are there specific health conditions that oxygen treatments can help with?
So overall, we say oxygen is anti-inflammatory. It increases ATP, which is your cellular energy. It detoxifies. It mobilizes your stem cells, and it normalizes your immune system. So that is a general for everybody. This is what it does. But we have seen it's very good for people with brain problems, multiple concussions, autism, stroke, anything. We've also, like, there's a lot of studies that say it has had a benefit for people with everything from arthritis, sports injuries. We use it pre and post surgery for people. And we've had multiple people with cancer, all sorts of things come and utilize oxygen and seen benefit.
Okay. Are there any potential side effects or something that people should be aware of when using hyperbaric oxygen treatments?
Yeah, but we use a mild pressure chamber. It's not a high pressure chamber, so it's very safe. The only issue you can have is sometimes you get a slight detox effect because of the oxygen. Your body starts detoxing because it has that added energy. And so maybe the first or second session, you won't feel super great. But with increased water intake, usually by the third or fourth, you're fine. And that's kind of on the rarer side. Usually a lot of people feel more energized. So good that way.
There are no reported side effects for mild pressure hyperbarics. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, we can all use more energy, that's for sure. And you two have been doing this for about 5 years. You've had your clinic, and you have kind of a personal story there, don't you, Cassandra?
I do. 6 years ago, I suffered a medication withdrawal, which I should have been weaned off of, but I was just pulled off of, and it just broke my brain. I was in my room, shaking. I didn't sleep for weeks, and I just thought I'm never going to be normal again. But somebody introduced me to hyperbarics at that time and said, I think you should go in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. And so I started going in, and it just totally made all the difference in the world for the healing of my own brain. So I'm a big believer in what it can do for you.
That's incredible. How many sessions did that take for you to start feeling better?
I went in at least 40 sessions.
Ooh, it's a lot. Yeah.
Probably more than that. Yeah.
But it worked for you. So that's incredible. Now, you also do this infrared light therapy, right? So I've heard that this is another treatment you offer. So what types of lights are these, and how does it affect our body?
Yeah, well, it's a type 2 medical device. And what it does is it increases nitric oxide in your body. And what nitric oxide does a whole host of things. Incidentally, as we age, we produce less and less nitric oxide. So when you're 40, you produce half as much as you did when you're 20. When you're 60, half of that again.
Wow.
So, what it does is it actually dilates your blood vessels. And so there's more blood movement, more oxygen being carried to the tissues. It stimulates hormone release as well. Increases circulation, and it actually can also decrease swelling, and you can also use it for pain reduction. What it does is actually mimics the medicine morphine, the drug morphine, without any of the side effects. So it can definitely have a pain relieving aspect as well.
So it works on the inside of your body and also topical on your skin too, right?
Yeah, so you can use it for skin, for body shaping. You can use it for liver detoxification, heavy metal detoxification. Yeah, it's a type 2 medical device, and it's also, you can purchase it and own it in your own home. So that gives you usage every day if you want to.
Okay, and there's studies out there that are showing positive results as well?
Yes, there's lots of studies that show for a variety of things, everything from skin issues to detoxification to wound healing.
Wow. Okay. What are some of the most common types of health conditions that clients come to you for treatments?
Honestly, we see a lot of people who have been to 2 or 3 doctors and maybe a specialist, and they know something's wrong with them, but they can't figure out what it is. All the blood tests come back normal, but they don't feel well, and they're saying something's wrong with me. And so then we start doing testing and using some of the modalities that we have to try to shift body chemistry and find out what are the roots of this problem. But we've also seen people with specific issues, car accident victims with brain injuries, Alzheimer's patients, cancer patients. And then we've seen people who just want to know more about their own body and how can I increase my own health? And, am I aging? What's happening in my body? And so they just want to know about better nutrition and really excellent supplements.
Okay, well, you mentioned supplements. I believe you guys sell different types of things, but also a big part of your health, and you mentioned this at the beginning, is you do a BIA, which is that bioimmunity analysis on patients. So what does that involve exactly, and what information does the analysis provide?
So it's a urine and saliva test that you can tell a lot about what's going on inside the body by what's coming out of the body. So we test your sugars, your salts, your pHs, your ureas, and then we can give you a metabolic efficiency. So how well is the body digesting food? We can give you an immune energy efficiency rating. How well is the body able to deal with stress? How well is the immunity? We give you a biological age. So how much aging is taking place in your body? And then we look at the various imbalances and say, what organs need relief or what's under stress? How can we shift this chemistry? And then we use nutrition and supplements to do that for you.
That's incredible. And then I understand you also do that hair mineral analysis. You mentioned that at the top there. So I believe this can reveal how the body is storing minerals and toxic metals and producing energy.
Yeah, so the hair mineral analysis is kind of a longer term picture about what's been going on in your body. It gives us an exact level of each mineral in your body and whether you're dealing with any toxic metals. It also gives us an adrenal and a thyroid and a blood sugar and an energy rating. And then we look at the ratios of minerals in your body because they're pretty important. The body is 75% water, 25% minerals. So these ratios, like zinc copper ratio, is for detoxification, and it should be 8 zinc to 1 copper. Well, if that is off, your body's not detoxing properly. So then we try to balance the ratios and the chemistry using the minerals that we have.
Oh, wow. Speaking of minerals there, I believe that you're kind of a huge advocate of people not taking enough minerals. A lot of people take vitamins, but you're saying we should actually supplement that with minerals as well, right?
Well, it's the minerals that help us absorb the vitamins. And so if you don't have a good mineral base, you won't actually make use of the vitamins you're taking. And so we really like people to have a good mineral base. And I've really come to see that I think most diseases are actually a mineral imbalance in the body, either deficiencies or minerals in the wrong place, like calcification, right? Calcification in the brain can lead to Alzheimer's. Calcification in the joints can lead to arthritis. So we like to look at the mineral base of the body, and the more we can balance that, the more health there is.
Okay. And then, of course, we were talking about supplements. I know I take supplements. A lot of people do, but you believe that supplements that offer, the ones that you offer, I guess, are a little bit more superior. So what's the difference between yours and any other kind?
Well, the liquid minerals that we offer, they're angstrom sized. And that means that they can go directly into your cells. So you can absorb them sublingually. So they can bypass digestion. So most people have compromised digestion, and they maybe are getting 30%, maybe 40% of the minerals that they're taking in pill form. But these can go straight into your cells. And so you're getting 100% absorption. They're also water soluble, so they won't build up in your system and cause problems with metals. And they're also properly ionized. So they're actually sort of pulled into the cell.
Wonderful. And then, God, you guys do so much stuff here. So another type of treatment you do is called, let me see if I get this right, QRS Cell Vital. So what is that, and what is it helpful for?
Well, we have a QRS, and it's the same one they use on the space station. And they use it there so that they don't get osteoporosis and that they can have cellular energy in that environment. It's an electromagnetic resonance pad, and it basically speaks the same biological language as your cells. So it's a lot of cellular vitality. So I say that 8 minutes on the QRS is like 3 hours of walking or 1.5 hours of hard exercise.
What?
To your body in the same cellular energy rejuvenation. So people who can't exercise, this is a great thing. It can also help restore the parasympathetic nervous system. So for people who've been in fight or flight for a long time, it can help restore that parasympathetic so they can rest and digest. And it also helps restore people's sleep cycles. Because people have trouble with sleeping. And so again, it's a type 2 medical device, and you can own it and have it in your own home. So these are really, really good things that we think are great for people.
Instead of going to the gym, just hook yourself up to a machine, basically, and sit there and watch your favorite show on TV.
Exactly.
That's great. What does the QRS actually stand for?
Quantum resonance system.
Okay, well, that sounds very futuristic as well. You guys are great. We really appreciate having you on today. I've learned so much. Thank you.
Appreciate being here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Brian and Cassandra Meyerhofer are the owners of the Oxygen House, which is located in Lethbridge and also in Raymond, Alberta. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.